Hello, welcome back to the God Conundrum audio. So this is part 4. And if you recall from part 3, we were talking about how scientists in the 19th century, late 19th century, or many of them anyway, rejected God because they came to this conclusion, group conclusion, that they indeed were the cleverest beings in the universe. So I'm just going to wrap that up a little bit, which will introduce us nicely to part 4, where we're going to talk about interesting facts around the universe in an attempt to work out whether the universe and everything we know and see around us and simply take for granted was either made by accident or was created by a mind. We've only got a 50-50 option here, as with most things. So just to wrap up on the 19th century scientists, I'll continue now. So not everyone in the modern academic world during the 19th century discounted God. Many scientists argued that without a creator, human thinking, calculating, and science were not possible. God, they said, gave us the minds and the intelligence to do science. In fact, prior to the new atheist movement, science and Christianity had worked hand in hand perfectly. They'd done this for centuries. It's how the Western world developed. Advancements came through studying nature and carrying out experiments, attempting to work out and explain how God designed and made everything we see around us. And if you remember, Einstein said something similar. So scientists were looking at planetary systems, chemicals, animal life to plant life. But after the atheist movement took off, scientists began looking at nature and the world around us very differently. They tried to explain how everything we see around us, everything we feel, everything that we take for granted, had made itself by accident. Sir William Bragg, a Nobel laureate in physics, maintained that both faith and science were necessary tools for understanding different aspects of reality and getting an understanding of the world around us. He said, and I quote, "Christianity and science are opposed." Now that's quite a killer statement, you've got to admit. But he continued, he said, "But only in the sense that my thumb and forefinger are opposed, and between them I can grasp everything." Now that's a killer quote. Okay, so now let's move on then to the interesting facts around the universe. These are simple to get your head around, but very little known, and certainly little known to me when I began my research project into the God Conundrum. I absolutely knew nothing about the universe, and the complexity of it just blew my mind. But it's not as complex as you might think, or rather understanding of it is not quite as complex. So I'm going to continue. Here we go. Interesting facts about the universe. You tell me if you think the universe did all of this itself with no design, no methodology, no intelligence, no creator, or you think logically that all of this must have been designed by a mind. Okay, here we go. Fun facts to take down the pub with you. Our nearest star, the sun, is massive. Well, we know that, but you could fit 1.3 million Earths inside it. Gives you an idea. And if you flew to the sun in a jumbo jet, it would take you 20 years to travel the 93 million miles. Now, that is non-stop travel for 20 years. That is one long haul. The next nearest star to Earth is something called Proxima Centauri. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And flying there in the same aeroplane would take, get this, 4 million years. So 20 years to the sun, 4 million years non-stop flying in a jumbo jet to our nearest star after the sun. Now, if you look up to the night sky and choose any two stars close to one another, do it tonight if you've got a clear sky, it would take just as many millions of years, so at least 4 million years, to travel from one star to the other. So that gives you just a very basic idea and understanding of the vastness of the universe. In fact, the universe is so big that the twinkling light we see from some stars in the night sky takes more than 10 billion years, 10 billion, not million, billion years to reach our eyes on Earth. And even though that light is travelling at the speed of light, which is 671 million miles an hour, it's very hard to comprehend all of this, but it's interesting, isn't it? And what about the basic necessities of life that, again, we just simply take for granted? Water was something that I looked into, so titled here, Does Water Come from Outer Space? One theory is that billions of years ago, water was delivered to Earth from outer space by asteroids and meteorites. In truth, no one knows for sure. It's all guesswork. And thinking about our water supply is very interesting because all those who have ever lived on Earth have been drinking the same water since the beginning of time. This means that the water you drink today might have been swallowed by dinosaurs millions of years ago. That's because the Earth doesn't create water. It uses the same water that has been here since the very beginning. Now, water might well be mismanaged by people and, of course, water companies, but it's never really wasted because it's continuously recycled through the natural water cycle. That's the title for it. This recycling process is driven by solar energy, which evaporates the water from rivers, lakes, and oceans. The process obviously removes the salt very cleverly, and the clouds then transport the water elsewhere and deposit it as drinking water. So it's just a continual cycle. So even though the amount of water on the surface of the planet is finite and therefore it does not increase or decrease, in 2014 experts discovered an enormous underground water reservoir 400 miles below the Earth's mantle. The water is stored in rocks that act like sponges, and it's estimated that in this underground ocean there is enough water to fill all of the Earth's oceans 3 times over. Now, if I'd said this to you 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, you wouldn't believe me, but this is scientifically proven. There is a reservoir of water 400 miles below, 3 times the size of all of the water we have on Earth today. And get this, if all of that water were released in one go, this underground ocean would submerge the Earth's surface hundreds of meters deep. The water is there. So the 2014 discovery of underground water challenges the old theory of water being delivered to Earth by meteorites. It seems far more likely that the water has always been here and was created at the very same time as the Earth was created. And of course, you can trace that back to the instantaneous explosion or expansion of the Big Bang from a place smaller than the tip of your eyelash. Now, water, of course, is a commodity that we cannot live without. Yeah, human beings can't last more than a few days without water. All life forms need water. So what do we do if we need more water? Can humans make water? I mean, it's not that difficult to make water. So can human beings make water? So water, H2O, is formed from hydrogen and oxygen. That's it. We know what these things are. By mixing the gases in a laboratory, it is possible to make very small amounts of pure water. But it is not yet a scientifically practical way to make large and useful volumes of water. The cost is exorbitant, and the possible chemical reactions, due, of course, to the release of massive quantities of energy, make it far too dangerous. Making water is not dissimilar to making a hydrogen bomb. How the Earth did it without blowing itself up, no one knows. Now, the Earth and its makeup are much more complicated than we think, but the Earth is minuscule in the extreme compared with the rest of the complicated universe. To get its size into some sort of understandable scale, consider this. If the world were the size of a single grain of sand, what, a millimetre? Just a single grain of sand, less than that, then the observable universe we can examine with our eyes would be the size of Australia. But it's not all about size. The universe is admittedly gigantic beyond any real comprehension, but it's also incredibly complex. No mathematician or physicist can get anywhere near or understanding or describing it fully. Imagine the universe as an enormously complicated clock with billions and in fact trillions of moving parts. For the clock, the universe clock, to run and keep time, each part must be tuned to perfection, to rotate, swing, revolve, push and pull perfectly and in synchronization with every other part. One imbalance, one piece removed, one setting or one cog out of place, too much winding or too little oil, and the clock, the universe, would smash itself to smithereens and cease to exist. Take gravity as an example. We all know what gravity is. I can't really quite explain what gravity is, but we know it exists. But we take gravity for granted. But if the gravity force was altered up or down by the tiniest amount, all life on Earth would die. To get an idea of how small this margin of error is, imagine gravity represented by a piece of string stretched taut between Earth and the Sun. If the length of the string was adjusted by 1/fraction of 1 millimeter, the whole gravity system would be thrown out of sync, enough for Earth to destroy itself in a loss of atmosphere, a flash of global floods, building collapses, and death for all creatures. Perfectly tuned gravity is just one of the many constants that are required for life. And if you remember, it would take you 20 years to fly to the sun. So can you imagine how long that piece of string is? The fine-tuning of the universe includes the flawless mix and balance of all the chemicals and nutrients required for life to survive. Take just one element out of the equation, carbon, for example, and nothing on Earth would live or would ever have lived. These necessities, each with their uniquely individual properties and purposes, were created, of course, by the Big Bang. All of this and much more is referred to as the fine-tune argument for God, for a creator of everything, which says that the universe is so finely tuned that it is mathematically and scientifically impossible for all of its constants to have created themselves unintentionally, in order, and so perfectly balanced for life. This is the scientific argument that points to the universe being designed by an intelligent mind. And talking about intelligent minds, we as humans think of ourselves as intelligent, and over many years we've developed science and we've discovered many things about the universe and our surroundings that at one time would have felt like superstition, nonsense, and certainly sci-fi. But let me now talk to you about something that has been discovered in recent times about the universe, which really does have a supernatural feel to it. But it's scientifically proven. So those skeptics out there, you can't deny this is real. I'm going to talk about dark matter and dark energy. Science has only recently discovered that 95% of the universe is made up of invisible dark matter and dark energy. But no one knows exactly what dark matter and dark energy are. NASA, they themselves admit freely on their website that they're not sure either. But they have proved that these immensely powerful forces are present all around us. They know this because of the effect the unseen phenomena have on the workings of the universe. I'm going to put it very simply. It's the only way that I can understand any of this, but bear in mind that NASA don't fully understand it either, but these things really do exist. So dark matter first. Dark matter is made up of physical particles, but because somehow these particles do not interact with light, they are completely invisible. Not even scientific instruments can see them. No other known material has the ability to hide its identity like this. And if you really didn't know this was real, you'd be forgiven for thinking that dark matter, with its cloak of invisibility, really was something straight out of a children's sci-fi comic. And had I mentioned dark matter to you 20, 30, 40 years ago, you would have accused me of making stuff up, scientifically proven. So although we can't see them, dark matter particles are indispensable to life. They act like a gravitational glue, pulling in and holding together all the moving parts of the universe in the form of galaxies, planets, and stars over trillions and trillions of miles. The equally mysterious dark energy is a force that pushes, stretches, and expands the universe with massive pressure. The two invisible forces have opposite effects, one pulling, the other pushing. But rather than destroying one another, they complement one another because the contradictory powers are so minutely and mathematically tuned, they work in tandem to balance, maintain, and keep the universe stable and its planetary systems accurately distanced. Any variation in the settings on either energy, too much of one or the other, this would cause the universe to self-destruct. All of this means that human beings can only see and touch 5% of what is really at work and going on. 95% of the universe remains a mysteriously powerful and invisible force. Now, don't worry if you can't understand too much of this. You're not alone. Nobody really does. And I think you might agree with me that even just these little bits, snippets of information, point to something cleverer than us, cleverer than the brightest scientists of the 19th century and the brightest scientists of the 21st century. There really is something going on here. But what science does understand is that the space between the planets and stars, which we once thought was just an airless void, is actually pulsating with inextricably dominant forces without which we'd all die. So, as it's an indisputable fact that dark matter and dark energy are real and invisible, would it stretch your imagination too far to believe that they were designed by a creator, designed by a mind? Could you also consider that there might be even more powerful and invisible, supernatural forces at work all around us that we have yet to discover or might never discover? Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are here. Now, what about the universe itself? Will it ever end? Well, scientists say that the universe will come to an end one day, but you don't need to worry about it too much. They calculate we've got anywhere between 5 billion and 20 billion years to do something about it. Experts disagree, though, on how it will happen. Some say we'll freeze to death, others believe the universe will explode in flames, or that it'll rip itself to pieces. In truth, no one really knows anything. Now, I mentioned earlier on that the universe is very much like a clock, a hugely complicated clock, and anybody with any experience with clocks or just a watch, a manually winding watch, will know that the slightest little imbalance can throw it out of sync. And so, everything needs to be finely tuned. But when writing this, I thought I need an analogy here to compare the universe to a clock and to beg the question whether the universe really was designed by a mind or it made itself by accident. So I came up with the Rolex watch analogy. I love my watches, and Rolex is a very common, very upmarket brand, but a common name. Everyone knows of it. So this is my Rolex watch analogy for you to think about, and do let me know what you think after you've heard it. So, because the universe is often compared with a finely tuned timepiece, I'm going to compare it with you finding a Rolex wristwatch. So just imagine you're out walking in the countryside when you stumble across a gold, diamond-encrusted Rolex twinkling under a bush. What would you think? How would you explain the Rolex being there? Would you assume that at some point before you arrived, the watch had instantaneously made itself by accident out of nothing? Or would you immediately conclude that someone had lost the watch, but prior to that, it had been made by an intelligent watchmaker? I hope you'll agree, the second option would be the more logical explanation for finding a Rolex under a bush. Now go back to the universe. Look up at the night sky. Understand the complication of it. What is the most logical explanation for that? So now talking about logical explanations, theories, let's look at the theories of the atheist and compare them to the theories of the Christian. So first of all, the atheistic theory of the universe. And if you're an atheist, comment, tell me what your thoughts are. Vice versa, if you're a Christian or just a skeptical person, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear them. The atheistic theory of the universe. Atheists say that nothing in the universe has any meaning or purpose. They once believed in the eternal universe theory, but they now agree the Big Bang is a scientific fact. They say, though, that the Big Bang happened for no reason, by accident, and nothing caused it. According to their logic, if it wasn't caused by anything, then nothing was required to make it. Atheistic scientists reject any suggestion of a designer and any suggestion of miracles, the supernatural, or, of course, God. They claim the fact the universe is fine-tuned for life is simply a lucky, accidental coincidence which cannot be explained and therefore needs no explanation. Okay, fair enough. Let me know your thoughts. The Christian theory of the universe. Christians use the fine-tuning argument, the fine-tuning phenomenon, to argue that the only rational explanation for the universe being scientifically accurate is that the universe was designed by a mathematical mind beyond our understanding. Christian scientists conclude that God is the only explanation for the universe, and they've been saying this for 2,000 years. Thanks for watching. Come back for part 5, where we'll pick up this theme again. Thank you.